When Rachel Reeves started as the Chancellor of this country, I had some reservations. Then there were some developments regarding how she lied on her CV and that whole debacle. But after that, it was a kind of a let's see what she can do. Then she came out with a really, really crazy policy, I would say, which was the national insurance on business at exactly the same time as the Employment Rights Bill while they were talking about growth. And she also didn't leave herself any headroom or room to make a mistake as well. And all of these things were really strange things for a Chancellor to do, for a seasoned economist to do. Now, I'm going to present two pieces of evidence today which are completely unrelated to economics to demonstrate how out of her depth Rachel Reeves is. Okay? Now, a lot of the time when people are watching the budget and they're thinking, oh, has the Chancellor done this and how's the Treasury done that? It was revealed in a recent interview with Jeremy Hunt, actually, and he said something which did take me back, and it was something along the lines of this. People imagine that there's some really mystical, complicated process involved when the Chancellor's coming up with the budget. But he said, in actual fact, all that happens is you get given an A3 bit of paper. There's someone from the Treasury sits across from you. You've got your team there. And there's also the Office for Budget Responsibility, the OBR, sitting there as well. And you just get a series of tick box exercises. And then everyone looks around and tells you what the impact's going to be. And so that's it. That's all that happens. So Rachel Reeves takes that away. She has a think. She comes back. The OBR gives their forecast and the Treasury backs up what the government wants to do most of the time. And so this is the process. It's not overly complicated. And so when Rachel Reeves came into office, and with her set of political beliefs, she made all of these changes and she tried to justify them in public. But the actual thing to bear in mind with Rachel Reeves is she doesn't understand economics at all. Not at all. She's not an economist. She hasn't done anything like that. She might have stuff on her CV that says, I worked here, I worked there. Doesn't matter. The woman isn't an economist. And I'm going to demonstrate that here today. And so here's a little interaction that happened in the Houses of Parliament. Now, the lady who's going to ask her this question is Esther McVey. And Esther McVey isn't exactly a world-leading economist, but she is a Tory, so she has got her head screwed on straight when we're talking about money. But this is Rachel Reeves and Esther McVey, and listen to the answer that Rachel Reeves gives, and more to that, look at Keir Starmer's face when he's sitting next to her, and even he's a bit surprised that she doesn't understand what she's doing.
Mr. McVey.
I'm sure the Chancellor subscribes to the basic principle that if the cost of something is put up, then we'll see less of it. It's the reason that governments over many years have put taxes on things like smoking. Does she accept this principle also applies to employing people? And the more expensive this government makes employing people with its jobs tax, increasing nick for employers, the less we will see of it.
Well, I think a really good example of that is the Conservative Party. The cost of the Conservative Party went up and the number of MPs shrunk.
Now that's called avoidance. And you know why it's called avoidance? Because Rachel Reeves was forced to think on her feet there. Esther McVey asked her a really, really simple question, and Rachel Reeves didn't know what to say, and she copied her boss and done the whole, oh, I'm just going to avoid the question. And of course, we watch Keir Starmer do that every week at Prime Minister's Questions, so we're used to it. But even so, somebody with anything about them would have given the government's answer to that. She was asked an official question in the Houses of Parliament, and she wasn't able to answer. She wasn't able to provide a cogent answer where she laid out why this is, why that is, and why the government's doing what it is. And I think that spoke volumes. The next bit of evidence I've got is more conclusive, but that there gives you an idea of how Rachel Reeves approached the job. She likes to go on television and give a lot of sound bites that she can get through a 5, 10, 15-minute interview with various people, the TV talking heads. But one of the jobs a Chancellor of the United Kingdom has is to go on to the world stage, the world media. And she was in Davos. She was laughed at a little bit there, not taken too seriously. But here's a clip from Bloomberg. Now, Bloomberg do interview people, and they do very, very sensible interviews where Bloomberg will turn up and they will test the person. So they're not given the list of questions beforehand. The person comes, they sit there, and Bloomberg, you've got to sit there half an hour in front of a full audience just fielding questions. And what it does, it tests your mettle. You've got to know your stuff, you've got to know what you're about, and you've really got to understand what your topic is. And when you're watching this clip, bear in mind that Rachel Reeves is the second most powerful person in the United Kingdom. She's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. She's holding in her head all the reasons why she's doing this, she's doing that. She's got to be on the ball and she's supposed to know her stuff. And you watch this clip.
3 bits of news maybe to deal with first. And the biggest and most obvious is Donald Trump's inauguration. He's already kicked off with tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Now he's talking about China. Britain is an unusually open economy. I think we're arguing about the numbers downstairs, but by some counts, 60% of trade equivalent to 60% of GDP. I suppose my question is, how vulnerable are we to this, especially given the fact that we've already come out of the European Union? One of you.
I'll start.
Your trade.
Good morning, everyone. Going around Davos, making eye contact with all your trade ministerial counterparts, you can imagine what is on our minds, right? And the conversation. But I think there's a few things on this. First of all, yes, the UK is a very globally orientated, trade-intensive.
Powerful people who know their stuff, when they're asked a question on the world stage, don't turn up with their mate for help. That's point one. Previous chancellors have turned up and sat there on their own. When people turn up for Bloomberg, Nigel Farage done an interview recently where he was taxed and hammered on two Bloomberg presenters. They both went at him and he sat there and he defended Reform's policies to their face in front of the crowd. And so he done that. He didn't take his mate. Rachel Reeves doesn't know her brief. She's not on top of it, so she had to take the business secretary. Now, she was asked a question, wasn't overly complicated, and she turned and passed the ball. What needs to be remembered when Bloomberg do these types of things is that they're watched by people in the investment community. And we're talking about central banks. We're talking about large investment houses. We're talking about the people that are watching her do that. They're the people that decide on how well they think Britain's doing and whether we have a good credit rating, whether we can borrow money at a cheaper rate, whatever it is, dealing with Britain. And look at that. She's unable to field a question from Bloomberg. And so when outsiders are looking in, and I'm sure you've had this recently, I go on X sometimes and I watch Americans who are just taking the mick all the time out of the UK. And they're talking about free speech, they're talking about Starmer rolling over for Europe, giving them fishing rights when they never really asked for it. EU couldn't believe their luck. We're becoming a laughingstock. And when people like Rachel Reeves goes on stage there and doesn't know her brief, what do you think people think? Well, I'll tell you what people think. They think the United Kingdom is a soft touch. And you know why they think that? 'Cause it's true. Anyway, thanks very much for your time.